welcome to Rewind Reviews, and of course, Merry Christmas, everyone. I assume this has gone up on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve. I think officially it would go up like the Tuesday is like the 26th, but I'm not putting up a Christmas podcast the day after Christmas, so I think this will just go up on like the 24th. That seems fair, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Oh.
Yeah.
So yeah, hope everyone's having a good Christmas. I hope all your respective families aren't doing your head in too much yet. I hope we're all tolerating.
Hope everyone's calm.
No one's had a fight about politics yet. I don't care if Uncle Dickhead voted for Brexit. It's fine. And he will not shut up about it. I can't help you.
Do you find when you go on holiday or away now, if you're in an airport, you play a little game at passport control, because obviously we're the non-EU passport control, and it's a much longer queue, and you play a little game for the people that are moaning, but also you think probably voted for Brexit. I play that game a lot.
Yeah, that's good fun.
Where I'm like, they don't look happy, and I bet it's partly their fault.
Well, last year we went to Amsterdam for my birthday, and it was the same weekend as the Formula One. So there were a lot of Max Verstappen fans moving through the airport, and you'd spot a mile away the very distinct colours, a lot of orange in the Max Verstappen fan base. Which apparently is that's the Dutch thing. Their sporting colour is orange. So Max Verstappen, being from the Netherlands, being Dutch, like that's what they do. So anyway,
Right.
all the people in front of me are well, no, not all. At least the two directly in front of me are, because I hear them talking to the very smiley passport control guy about Formula One, and he's stamping their passports and they're having a chat, and then they go away, and I think, oh, I've got it in here. I'm going to have a nice, pleasant experience with this gentleman. He sees my passport. His smile disappears instantly. He sort of sighs. He sort of glances at me, glances at it, and I'm like, yeah, so you Formula One fan as well? Then I just heard the last... Nothing. Not a peep from the man. Not interested in talking to me at all. Because basically, if you're English, in Europe right now, your name is Mud. Genuinely, my girlfriend's mum and stepdad moved out to Spain last year. They had to change the license plates on their car from British ones to Spanish ones because they kept getting their tyres slashed. Like,
oh wow,
the disdain that Europe has for us, and the disdain that this passport man had for me, and it was like something from a bad, like a sketch, because it was so. He disguised it so poorly. Do you know what I mean? Because it was like, hey, fellow Europeans who are into Formula One, Max Verstappen fans. He's basically like high-fiving everyone in the queue, and then got to me and went, nah, and they started high-fiving immediately after. Because the next person that came up, he was smiley again. Because I clocked it, because Nadia was in the opposite queue to me. We'd gotten split by the weird attendant person, so I was having to wait for her to go. So I had to then watch him be nice to all the non-English people behind me. One by one. Dear. Happy chatting with them.
What we're saying is Merry Christmas.
Yeah. I did lose myself then, didn't I, Chris? Sorry, everyone.
No, so did I. I started that. No, Merry Christmas. And you know what? If you're European, Merry Christmas to you, man. Because, our complaint there is that we don't represent the people that voted a certain way or our government, and I'm sure you don't represent passport attendance.
Right,
so,
right. And here's the thing: I'm with them. I'm also mad about this, so it's very frustrating because I almost feel like I should wear a sticker, a badge that says I didn't vote for this shit either. Like. With the EU logo on it. I also didn't want this. I'm with you. Yeah. But it's tricky, isn't it? Because it's understandable. They would assume. God.
Yeah. You want it to be like, let's chat about why it's wrong and watch the race.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I wasn't even in for the race. I didn't even get to watch the race. We had no idea the two things lined up. That was that was a coincidence. But I thought I had
Well,
it
if
in with the
you-
guy because I Chris. I'm as much as the next guy. I like a little bit of it. I have a little chit chat with the guy, keep things light.
Yeah.
Nothing for more than I've worked out a good timing. Like I know it when I see it, sort of thing. In terms of like how long is too long to be talking to the person. Someone gets chatting with someone in the queue in front of you, and you just think, oh, for fuck's sake, I'm going to be here for an hour. I'm very good at like tiny bit of polite banter. Out I go. Unlike this bit, which has now gone on forever.
And I think if you're saying about how you didn't know the race was on, Dan, well, don't worry, because if you were in Amsterdam and you were a Sky Go customer, then you still wouldn't have been able to watch it because due to the UK leaving the EU, there's issues watching Sky Go in the EU.
Yes, there is. I watched the race in a pub in the end, surrounded by Max fans, which was very exciting.
Yeah. Cool. Anyway, so Martin Freeman's in a movie. It's called Nativity.
Oh yeah, that's what we do, isn't it? We review movies on this podcast. We got very distracted very early.
Have you seen this? Because I know you've seen. I believe the director is the same director who did Confetti, which I know you really like. So I don't. Have you? What's your? I picked it, but let's start with you. What's your? Debbie, is it? That's it. What's your history with this movie? Have you seen it before?
Yeah, so I got a very, very quick story, very, very quick back history with this movie. As you point out, yes, I'm a huge fan of the movie Confetti, which was also directed by Debbie Izzet, who made this the film we're talking about today, which is, I don't think we've actually named it yet, Nativity, which is the sort of Martin Freeman, Mark Wootton Christmas comedy. We'll do a little brief recap of what the story is in a little bit. But in terms of my history with this one, basically being a fan of Debbie Izzet, I remember this trailer coming out and being reasonably excited for this film. Then I remember it coming out. I didn't see it in cinemas, so I think I ended up having to watch it. I mean, it probably came out in cinemas at Christmas. I've not checked that, but I assume so, right? It must have done. You wouldn't put this movie out in fucking April. Well, you might. I guess.
That'd be a bold
choice.
Move.
Yeah. So
Release
basically,
date, 27th of November 2009.
Yeah, there you go. So what my understanding is, I missed it in cinemas for whatever reason, just busy, Christmas, whatever, and then had to watch it in April or something like that when it hit DVD. And I just remember, just sticking it on, watching it, enjoying it, but not feeling the Christmas spirit, and just going, yeah, that was fine, and then literally never watching it again. And then I think what happened was,
well, I mean, Dad, thank God you're now watching it in September, eh?
Yeah.
Film more Christmas.
Yeah. So for listeners who don't know, we tend to record these in advance to give us flexibility in the schedule. So some weeks we record none of them, and then some weeks we record 2 or 3. Like, it really varies. We'll go a couple of weeks without recording anything, and then we'll end up recording 2 or 3 really close together. And it's just the way our scheduling works out. So if we're always 10 weeks ahead, that never actually affects release. They're always released weekly, no matter what, because we're so far ahead that there's no problem with that. So yeah, I did just watch this movie yesterday on the 25th of September. Sounds like December, very close. But like, I think so that's a fair point. But I think what happened was, I think I was a victim, or the film is a victim of its sequels in many ways, because I went from thinking it was like a fun, quirky British comedy to my impression of it just being, it's one of these fucking churn them out every year DVD sequel sort of shebangs. No matter how much I enjoyed the first one, which from memory was, I enjoyed it. I didn't walk away going, wow, I'm blown away. But I had a good time. I liked the movie. But I think it's one of those things where I think it has hurt itself in confusion over the years. This quote unquote franchise, and I'm going to use that word very lightly, by just churning out a bunch of very questionable sequels. And I say that based on the drop in rating on IMDb, which is quite staggering. across the three. And it actually, to be fair, it goes a bit up for the fourth one, but the third one's the real low point. It's called Nativity 3, Dude, Where's My Donkey? And it has 3.6 out of 10. Now, I'm gonna assume that's not great, that film. Maybe we'll get to it at some point. But I think that's made me have a less positive view looking back, on the film, which is a shame. Because I don't think the film deserves the reputation those sequels have given it. You know what I mean? But yeah, it was a nice little experience to just sit down and watch it again yesterday with all that, like, I mean, put it this way, Christmas is still sort of round the corner. Like, I can kind of, it's not like when I watched it the first time, which was just something mad, like it was like, middle of the year, like hot, like really hot days. It was a cold day yesterday. Christmas is only 2 months away ish. It didn't feel like a million miles out of the realms of something I should be doing. I kind of got into it. So yeah, that's my kind of history. Now you said something that blew my fucking mind last week when we were talking about this, or whenever we last recorded, because you said you watch this every fucking year. Now, yeah. I don't mean to sound judgy on this. This just surprises me massively, because I know there's a handful of films you have made a Christmas tradition, and I'm starting to wonder where you find the time to actually celebrate Christmas between watching all these fucking films that you watch every year. Because my memory is you definitely watch the Die Hard movie, or movies, every year, at least the first one. You watch all the Santa Claus movies every year. So how does this slot in? Do you have any time to see family at Christmas? Or is it just like, no, Mum and Dad, I can't come see you. I have to watch Nativity.
I think the one it's been happening the longest with and the most consistent is probably that. Although I feel like this one is as well. I would say we didn't get to. Well, I did because I watched them for the podcast, but I don't know if Jess even watched. No, I think we did watch the Santa Claus, and depending on the year will depend on whether we get to the other two as well. I always want to, but Jess is always a bit, but they're not great. And if we're busy. You got a big part of the tradition, obviously.
As always, Chris, she's right.
Yeah. You got to remember, there are two years of, like, COVID. Do you know what I mean? Where it was easier to watch a lot of Christmas films.
That's true. That's true.
And then Die Hard. I think last year I just watched on my own, and so I think the only two that sort of there is a concerted effort to really definitely we categorically are going to try and watch this is Nativity and the Santa Claus. I've never seen the sequels to Nativity, and I think Nativity's a relatively recent sort of the last 3 or 4 years maybe thing. I mean, I just anytime basically, and it's become a bit of a running joke, because anytime at Christmas Jess and I watch a Christmas movie, when that movie ends, I'm like, and Click and Collect, sorry, the BBC, the hour-long BBC, I make a real concerted effort to watch that, sometimes with Jess, sometimes without. So there's 3 things I think that I feel weird if we haven't watched, which is the Santa Claus, Click and Collect, which is an hour-long BBC special, basically, yes. With Stephen Merchant and Asim Chowdhury. And
I was trying to remember who else was in that, because I knew Stephen Merchant was out, and I couldn't remember who the second. I knew it was like a double act, like it was like two sort of comedic actors. I could not for the life remember who the second was. So it's Asim Chowdhury. Okay, very good. It's
Asim Chowdhury, yeah. And then Nativity, and I think Nativity is a relatively recent one. The really weird thing about Nativity, so I think maybe like the last 3-4 years, maybe. But I tell you what's weird about Nativity, despite the fact that I watch it every year, I cannot tell you when I first watched this. I think maybe with like Mum and Dad at theirs, maybe. I think it aired. I think this is one of those films where just because of the studio, I don't know if it is I don't think it is BBC Films or anything. It's basically one of those films.
Production companies were Mirrorball Films, BBC Films, and Screen West Midlands.
So I think it got on TV quicker than what I mean than films. I would suspect it aired on television potentially the Christmas after it had come out. I don't know for sure. So that would be 2010. So that would sort of be coming back from you. That would maybe fit, but I couldn't really tell you. I just think it's a bit of it's such a, and I guess this pivots into review in a way, because I can't remember my real history, but we definitely watch it every year, and I think the reason we watch it every year is because it's it's so harmless in a way, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? There are elements of it that you're like, that, doesn't make sense. Or that seems a bit extreme, especially towards the end, where you're just like, oh, come on now. Like my favorite thing being that a lot of the plot. So just to quickly, the plot is you've got a character played by Martin Freeman. I can't remember his name. Can you remember his name off the top of your head?
Off the top of my head, it is Mr.
Paul.
Maddens.
Mr. Maddens.
Because he's a teacher, so he's Mr. Maddens. If I knew him personally, I might call him Paul. But I'm going to assume the my heart's desire of just being a student again and having no responsibilities in life, and I'm going to refer to him as Mr. Maddens. I'll refer to the character as Mr. Poppy, and I will of course be referring to the principal as Miss Bevan.
Yes, there you go. Fair enough. But presumably, because she's not a teacher, Ashley Jensen's character we could just call Jennifer.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
So Jennifer. So basically, Mr. Maddens and Jennifer were together. They loved Christmas.
I like that we've made this a thing.
Yeah, but it's going to be harder with Mr. Shakespeare because he is a teacher, but technically they call him Gordon for most of the movie.
Well, it's because the kids never interact with him because he's such a nasty character. The movie avoids the movie avoids him talking to children.
Yeah.
He yells at his own kids. They do not talk back to him. So no point can I recall somebody calling him Mr. Shakespeare.
Except when he leads them into battle, which we'll talk about. And actually, I think the batshit crazy stuff we'll save because one of my favourite batshit crazy things is a spoiler, so we'll leave that. But Mr. Basically, because actually, well, we'll get there. So Mr. Madden and Jennifer break up, and it causes him to really dislike Christmas. He was going to propose to her, and she basically left him at Christmas and moved abroad
for reasons the movie is not at all interested in getting into.
No idea why that is. There's a sort of slight hint that she feels he could do more than teach. That's sort of like an under sort of current of that, but it's quite dark and brutal, so they don't really explore that too much. We just get the vibe of, it's complicated. So then she goes to America, and it leaves him quite bitter. And then Mr. in his old at the start, him, Jennifer, and Mr. Shakespeare are friends basically. And then Mr. Shakespeare and Mr. Madden both end up teaching. Mr. Shakespeare puts on these grand, amazing nativities, which are highly reviewed by Alan Carr.
Yeah, Alan Carr playing Alan Carr. No, the critic does have a name, I think, but it's Alan Carr. I like Alan Carr very much, but he is just playing himself here.
It's Patrick Burns because he describes people he's reviewed badly as Burns victims.
I forgot about that. You're right. It's Patrick Burns. I think in the credits he's just called the critic, because I'm just skimming through IMDb, and I found him, Alan Carr, the critic. So on
Wikipedia it says.
Go on.
Hold on. Well, it says Wikipedia. It says Alan Carr as Patrick Burns cricket, but there is then a little.
Wait, sorry, is a human cricket?
Oh no,
did I miss something?
Critic
section of the movie I missed.
It's Patrick Burns comma critic. So maybe critic, I think maybe you could cast it either way. Basically,
did you bring up the film itself then? Because I'm curious what the film credits him as now. Because IMDb usually goes by what the film credit of it. I'm going to pull the credits up. You carry on. You finish what you said. You're telling the story. I'm gonna find out what the credits are.
So basically, then Mr. Madden is told he has to put on a nativity, and he gets a teaching assistant, Mr. Poppy, to help him. Mr. Poppy is pretty out there. He's running around. He's fucking nuts, basically.
He is just credited as the critic. The movie's credits do not call him. Was it Patrick Burns? Did you say?
Patrick Burns. Yeah. Oh, fair enough.
And Ricky Tomlinson is just listed as Lord Mayor.
Ricky Tomlinson also seemingly playing Alan Carr as an Alan Carr type, and Ricky Tomlinson as a Ricky Tomlinson type.
Which I think for a movie like this, and particularly because of the way it was made, which we'll get into. But yeah, I think that's fine.
Yeah. Oh, I do. Yeah. And basically, he has to put on a nativity. He wants to play it quite serious, play it quite straight laced, and Mr. Poppy is the opposite of that. ball of energy, riling up the kids, wants to do loads of really extravagant stuff. And then in a confrontation whilst buying a Christmas tree, Mr. Madden lies to Mr. Shakespeare and says that Jennifer and Hollywood is going to come over and see the Nativity, which causes Mr. Poppy to tell everyone that, and sort of the lie gets bigger and bigger. And then we're in a situation where they're trying to basically put on this Nativity and also trying to work out this America situation. And I think... So I won't say the batshit crazy until we get into spoilers. I think the reason I watch it every year is because it's just harmless. Like, there's some stuff that's like it's just nuts, but there's some really funny moments. The kids are all very charming, and like some of it's a bit twee, but it is a Christmas movie, so you sort of do expect that from a Christmas movie. And I think it's just it genuinely. I would go as far to say, actually, probably, this entertains me more watching it every year than the Santa Claus, because actually there's so many like hidden jokes that, like that Burns victim thing, like, you know what I mean. One year I'll forget that and I won't really take it in, and then it will be said again. And there's loads of little moments. I think because of the way it was filmed, which we will get to, there's loads of little moments right from the off, even the, like, you know, well, those that can't teach all of that stuff. Like, I think there's so much there's a combination of like overtly slapstick and it you know, it does feel, like I say, a bit twee, but warm like a Christmas movie should. So I think if you're a fan of Christmas movies, you know, the cast are all brilliant, you recognise Martin Freeman, give it a shot. What are you? I'd be very intrigued to know what you thought on rewatch.
You know, it's funny. So with it being sort of set up that my initial watch was like just like, yeah, that's fine, and moving on with my life, and almost essentially forgetting the movie existed beyond noticing the over the years the never ending cavalcade of sequels with stranger and stranger names.
And it's worth saying, with batshit crazy names and a musical as well. It's also a musical now as well. So it really has, like, as a franchise.
So it was a bit strange to sit down and watch this again, with that as my history with it. But I gotta tell you, mate, it's fucking delightful. I loved it. I really enjoyed it on this viewing.
That's a much better word than harmless. Delightful's the word. Yeah.
It's just joyful. It's just fun and light, and you're right. I think you hit on it with twee. I think there is a lot of that. There's a lot of like things work out because they have to. 'Cause it's a Christmas movie and it wants a happy ending, sort of stuff. Which you know, I don't even consider a spoiler, because if you start watching this movie and you're expecting the dark seven, what's in the box ending, then you are in the wrong place. This movie telegraphs where it's going, not particularly subtly, and that's fine. That's allowed. And you know, I just there was so much joy in the film, and I will say as well, there's a lot of what I think I really liked about the film was a lot of what goes unsaid in this film that it tackles just by being about what it's about. You know, so for example, just giving these kids a chance, like these kids from this like shitter school, you know, and but also this idea that you've got these two teachers with these two opposing viewpoints. Well, one's a teaching assistant, but like, you know, almost one teaching the other to just have a bit of fun with it. You know, one's kind of lost his spirit. He's lost his joy. No one ever sits him down. There's never a scene where someone says, you've lost your joy, you've lost your spirit, you need to learn to have some bloody fun. Instead, they just pair him up with this other character, and we see him learn to have more fun by the end of the film, right? We see him loosen up as the movie goes on. And that's because we saw how stiff and so much of a stick in the mud he was in the opening, 30 minutes, 20 minutes of the movie. That's delightful to see. The movie never says that's what's happening. Do you know what I mean? So, like, from my perspective, I just think if we're doing overall thoughts before we get into the actual like nitty gritty of what transpires in the film, just from a basic like overall perspective, I just think I don't know if anyone could do this idea better than this. This is the kids, the family, the town are at the heart of this, and I think for a Christmas movie, to have that level of sort of whimsy and magic, while also being quite funny and having a decent story that's structured reasonably well, and not a lot of like structural or pacing problems. Which, by the way, considering how they shot this or how they made this movie, which is to say without a script, and we'll get to that, is fucking bananas. Like, the fact this movie works at all. But I always feel that way about Confetti too, to be honest with you. The directors of the movie that I've seen, I've only seen 2 of her movies, but you know, and it does seem, by the way, that she's been swallowed up by the Nativity franchise in recent years, which is fine. If that's what she's enjoying doing, then I would
Dan,
never.
if you want to explore her work, we've been. Someone's got to pull the trigger eventually and pick a franchise for this year, haven't they? And Nativity 2, Danger in the Manger with David Tennant might be the one. But we'll come to it.
We'll come to it. So I'm sort of like. I'm in a position where, like, I was just really pleasantly surprised. I think this movie works much better than I originally anticipated. I think, obviously, the cast is always the draw for a movie like this. I mean, Martin Freeman and Mark Wootton are obviously immediate knock it out the park wins because they're both very good at what they do. But, like, also Jason Watkins, who is, I think, one of this country's, like, best under the radar actors. I've seen him in so many things, and he is always absolutely incredible. And I don't know when he's going to get, like, the household name status he deserves. But yeah, Jason Watkins, who one of my favourite villains of all time in television was Jason Watkins in Being Human. He was amazing in that show. But anyway, Ashley Jensen, of course, who is basically a national treasure at this point, and should be put in a little box with a bow on it and protected at all costs, because she's too good for this world.
It's worth saying, like, not only is it in general a brilliant, because all of those names are brilliant actors in general, but they are also perfectly cast in this. Like, yes. Martin Freeman is the perfect blend of being able to do grumpy and then switch. Like, the actual moment that Martin Freeman's character switches and decides to get on board, it happens quite like we've seen it build throughout the film, but in the hands of a lesser actor, I don't think that works as well. Same with Mark Wootton. In the hands of a lesser actor, Mr. Poppy is just too irritating to enjoy the film. In the hands of a lesser actress, Jennifer's character is arguably a bit of a villain. Like, and I think the movie, one of the movie's flaws is that we don't explore, as you said earlier, we don't really explore Jennifer's side of it that much. And I think,
to be fair, we also don't explore Mr. Madden's side of it. Like, if I was going to lay any criticism at the film's structure and the plot or whatever, it is just that they fall out for mysterious reasons. They break up for mysterious reasons. And then when they get back together, you sort of go, yeah, I didn't really understand why you broke up in the first place, ? So this isn't surprising. You know what I mean? Like, it's as inevitable as that feels. You just sort of go, like, I don't understand how we got here. And I don't, the movie's not invested in making that make sense. So that's fine.
Even let me get his name. Hold on. I can't find. Oh, even Clark Peters.
I was going to say Clark Peters. Yeah, he was probably one of the next names I was going to mention.
It's the Clark Peters of The Wire fame. Like, even his casting, like, as the Hollywood producer, is pitch perfect. Yeah. Like, everyone is adding more nuance and layers to these roles than other actors would, and it's just they're all perfectly cast.
Yeah, and just to shout them out as well, because I think they both do an amazing job. Pam Ferris is Miss Bevan, and Rosie Cavaliero, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, as Miss Rye. Rosie Cavaliero, I recognised her, so I looked her up. She's just like I don't even know how to describe this. What a prolific career. Like, just hundreds of TV shows. If you live in England, are like, household name TV shows, this lady's been in them all. She's done everything from modern stuff like Ghosts and Friday Night Dinner, but you go back, she did like The Bill and Casualty. She was in Shameless. Like she's been in like 1,000 shows, and she was in Little Dorrit. I just clicked on her IMDb. I could literally read stuff from this all day. That's like she's done so much stuff. She's great in this, and I got distracted because of her sort of backstory. But yeah, obviously Pam Ferris as well as Miss Bevan. What a delightful. She gives, in my opinion, one of the most heartfelt sort of like gut punchy moments of the film, and I wasn't expecting it, because you would normally give a moment like that to one of the leads. Giving that to her was it fills your heart with joy. It's great. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Speaking of casting, I got to chuck my own unless you've got it. Have you got any? Have you got any triv on the musical?
No, I don't know. The only triv I got on the musical is the last piece of triv is 7 years after the film's release, Debbie Izzet produced a stage musical of the film, and then I put a question mark next to it because I don't know anything about the stage musical.
So, let me tell you this, right? So, it's toured 17, 18, 19, and 2022. So, it's clearly like it keeps coming around. But it looks like what they did at different shows, they subbed in, for like London in particular, for the critic, they subbed in other more well-known people to play the critic and the Hollywood producer. So, Joe Brand on one of the tours played the critic. Rylan, as in Rylan Clark Neal, played the critic on one tour, in one London, in a run in London. I would love to have seen Rylan do the critic. I think that would have been brilliant. My favourite one, arguably though, is connected to the Hollywood producer. You still there?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Someone's trying to phone me, so I didn't know if that had cut you off. So my favourite one is connected to the Hollywood producer. So on the 2017 tour, on the London date, Louis Walsh played the Hollywood producer.
Wait, he plays a Hollywood producer, does he? Louis Walsh?
Louis Walsh played the Hollywood producer.
The man's so Irish that it hurts.
Yeah. And then in the 2018 tour, a range of people played the Hollywood producer, including Jake Wood, Charlie Brooks, and Danny Dyer.
Fucking brilliant. Amazing.
Spectacular.
That is amazing. I don't even know where to go with that, but yeah, the whole thing though, top to bottom, I think this is. I mean, and look, and a movie like this literally lives on its cash, because let's crack into the interesting elements of Debbie Izzet as a filmmaker. Debbie Izzet doesn't work with a script, and for anyone going, well, how does that work? Debbie basically makes her films. We're on first name terms, by the way, just to clarify. Debbie Izzet makes her films with the Curb Your Enthusiasm method, which is to basically get a bunch of comedic actors and plot out the movie, so you know the beats, you know roughly what the scenes will be. So you say, well, we're going to open with the scene where the character learns this about himself. Then we're going to have the scene where we have our inciting incident. We have the scene where they're going to meet this person for the first time. We're going to have the scene where, and basically the actors will get those instructions. Okay, this is what you're coming into the scene to do. You're mad at him for this, and you're going to come out of the scene with this conclusion. Go. And all of the dialogue, all of what happens in the midst of that, in between action and cut, is improvised by the actors. And they'll do multiple takes, tons of takes, hundreds of takes, until they can assemble a movie. This is how she made Confetti, and this is how she made Nativity. Now, I don't know if that was the same method used for the Nativity sequels, which were also directed by Debbie Izzet, or if she decided to go for a more traditional approach. I do think this is a bit of a nightmare for unions, though, because she is credited here as the writer, because she did obviously structure the entire story, come up with the characters and all that stuff, and the actual thrust of the film, narratively speaking. But it's tricky that if you didn't do the dialogue. I'm not sure. Like, that must have been a nightmare to arbitrate. Did anyone try to claim they should get a writing credit on this? I don't know. they might have had a claim. But anyway, so that's how the movie is made. So, as much as we're going on about the cast, they literally brought the dialogue to this movie. Many of the jokes, at least the verbal ones, came from the cast. Obviously, a lot of the jokes that will have needed to actually have been designed and arranged, because they had involved the scene playing out a certain way. Obviously, were from Debbie Izzet herself. But it's really interesting the way this comes together. And again, without your Martin Freeman and your Mark Wootton, that definitely falls down. They both do such a good job finding the voices of the characters.
I sort of assume that it's done in a similar way to Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah,
I
said
what I mean? Oh, did you say? Oh, sorry. Sorry, I might have been distracted by trying to work out who had phoned me. Apologies.
No.
The one amusing Debbie Izzet story to slip in here. Oh, it's so bad. I don't know, Dan, if you've ever thought back or looked back to some of the decisions you made at uni. For context, Dan and I met doing a script writing course, and I wouldn't want to read the scripts I wrote at the time, but I remember one unit we had to basically pitch a project, and we had to pitch a film that we were writing, and we basically had to pitch a team to make it, and I'm pretty sure I pitched Debbie Izzet directing, and I'm pretty sure, quite fairly, during the pitch, the course tutor said, "You've picked a director that writes their own stuff, but also writes and directs their own stuff, but that stuff tends to be improvised. So not only have you got a director that's never directed anything they've not created, but you've also got a director that's never directed a script." In just that really arrogant youth uni way. I think I must have just been like, "Yeah, but I think she'd do this." Such a shit answer. Yeah, no, I think she'd do this project though, because of course you would.
That's amazing. That is amazing. I love it. I love it so much. That's good.
No, but I agree with you. The movie literally falls apart without the actors.
Yeah, and that is not to take away from her work. Putting the story together and planning it all out and making the damn thing, and then finding the story in the edit with her editor, who I believe is also her partner, but I was just going to find the name, and I've struggled to do it. 1 second. The editor is also should, in my opinion, get a shout out here, because I think a lot of a movie like this is done in the edit. Nikki Ager.
Nice.
Who directed?
Nice. And the edited.
Who directed? Who edited Confetti and subsequently all of the Nativity movies? Bar Nativity Rocks.
Here's a comment on the editing. It's amazing how many montages there are in this movie without it getting annoying, isn't it?
Yes, and I think the reason you have so many again is because my understanding is they just shot, and they kind of found the movie in the edit and pulled the movie together in the edit. That is how they did it hit around on Confetti, and I know that for Confetti for sure because actually both of us we attended a writing conference years ago, and Jessica Hines, I don't know what name she's running under now because her name changed, didn't it? Is she still under Jessica Hines now, or is she?
I'm not sure.
Oh, that's it. Oh no, is that? She changed her name at one point, didn't she? So she's Jessica Stevenson until 2007. Now she's Jessica. Okay, so she's Jessica Hines now. Sorry. Okay, good. At least I clarified. Better to check, I suppose, than get it wrong.
For sure.
So she worked on Confetti, and then ended up apparently in the second Nativity movie, which again I've not seen, so I'm not sure. Actually, this is our second Jessica Hines movie this season, Chris, because we also did. No, it's not, because she's not in this one. My brain is dying. I was like, because she's also in Shaun of the Dead. But she was talking about making Confetti and explained that process and how strange it was.
She is in Shaun of the Dead. She's in Shaun of the Dead she's one of the... Isn't she
I didn't
one
say
of the,
she... I didn't say she wasn't. She's not in this movie.
Oh, I'm with you. Yes, you're right. She's not in this movie. She's in Confetti. Yeah,
she's in Confetti, but she's also in Nativity too. So like my brain died for a second, and I inserted her into both this and that. But we haven't chosen two movies she's in. She's just come up here. So she was speaking about the process of making Confetti and described this thing of just doing 1,000 takes and shooting scenes for subplots that never saw the light of day, and just shooting tons and tons of material, and then watching cuts of the movie over months and months as it comes together and as it shapes into what it is. So this movie was created very much in its edit, and that is an amazing process, because I'm going to assume the same process was used for Confetti and this. I think that's a safe bet. There's not a huge amount of information out about this movie. I'm going to give you guys a little teaser now. There's almost no trivia, like basically zero trivia. I've got a handful of things, like literally 5 items. We'll get through it real quick. But yeah, so yeah. Overall thoughts. We're definitely recommending this. I had a really good time watching it. It managed to make me feel Christmassy in September, which is pretty fucking impressive, if I'm being honest with you. So let's get into some of the specifics of what this movie is then, because I've got some thoughts on some of the specifics. You wanted to pull up some moments of madness, I think.
Yeah, let me give one of my favourite moments of madness, because every time I watch this, I'm like, fucking.
And it's worth clarifying now. We are in spoiler territories. If you've not seen the movie and we've convinced you that it's worth giving a go, go watch it. Go watch it. It is delightful. It's a good time.
It is really delightful, and it's really warm, and like it's and I think it's. And I don't think we've stated this clear enough. It's genuinely very funny. Like, it is genuinely really, really amusing. Like, there's a lot of really great jokes in the dialogue. There's some great set pieces. Go watch it.
And I'd say it's genuinely heartwarming too, because I think there's a lot of movies that go for heartwarming and don't get there. I think this is genuinely heartwarming.
Yeah, especially when Jennifer watches the video and when Mr. Maddens reads the Christmas wishes. Those two scenes in particular are so heartwarming.
And I'll be honest with you though, watching the kids do it well. Once the nativity starts, I just felt heartwarmed seeing them get it right. Do you know what I mean? Because so much of the movie was about how these kids couldn't do anything. Every single time every time that the nativity itself is good or entertaining, or the kid sings well, I just a little spark of joy.
And were you? Because did you remember the fact that they'd cast multiple Mary and Josephs, or was that moment a real
complete surprise?
So that moment must have been great for
moment.
you.
Unbelievable. Like, just absolutely incredible. The genius behind that thought. I mean, there's so much, reasonable amount of the movie I kind of remember. The plot isn't like, it's not the most unique plot in the world. Like, it's a pretty simple story. I recalled the general thrust of the film, but that moment was absolutely not in my memory banks, and I was again. You want to talk about heartwarming, Christ. Yeah.
For context for people, there's been a bit of a debate throughout the film of who's going to play Mary and Joseph, with Joseph in particular being fought for by multiple boys. And then we see Mary and Joseph, and then we cut to another Mary and Joseph, and then basically they've made everyone Mary and Joseph, or everyone that wanted to be them Mary and Joseph. It's perfectly done.
It's really good.
That's the kind of genius of Debbie Issitt. Like, that is do you know what I mean? That is a plot point that is planned and
right,
put
precisely,
out there and structured.
Yes.
No, one of my favourite bits of batshit. There's in the actual show of Nativity, there's a load of batshit craziness. There is a child like what are they like abseiling down like.
Yeah, I don't know what the word. It's not abseiling, but it's like when they do the wire work in a West End musical, and someone sort of comes down from the stage, they do that. But because they're recording this not recording this, they're performing this in like an abandoned like sort of cathedral. The height where he's coming from, it's like you would absolutely be terrified to see a child doing
Yeah.
wire work from
Yeah.
that height.
Yeah.
Especially, and this is going to sound like a really weird pull, but especially as a wrestling fan, because of what happened with Owen Hart, where he did something similar in an arena and sadly, very tragically perished, fell to his death. Every time I see those now, whether it's only from a few feet off the ground at a in a West End play in a smaller theatre or something on a bigger scale, every single time I see somebody in one of those sort of wirework things, I get little like, oh god, and this is a child.
I doubt that information's out there, but I'd love to know how because there must have been some insane safety precautions in place to do it, or maybe it wasn't the child, but it certainly looks like it's the child coming down on that wire,
or it's a very impressive composite shot, and the child was actually shot in a much in a much less off the ground environment, something a bit closer to much closer to the ground, and then they sort of shot it to make it appear as though he was coming from near where the spire is on the wires. But even if, I mean, obviously, if they did it for real, they obviously had all of the necessary safety precautions. Of course,
yes, of course.
I wouldn't imply otherwise. But like, for me, having it's a weird thing when you grew up as a wrestling fan. That the Owen Hart situation, because it happened on television, it was live television, and they had to cut away from it. It was, a lot of kids who grew up and saw that moment, I think, probably have real anxiety whenever they see somebody doing that kind of wire work. It's hard not to. It was a really tragic thing that happened with Owen Hart. So yeah, I certainly my heart was in my throat for a second when I saw that. I was like, I know this is fine. I'm watching the movie. It exists. They wouldn't have released this movie if a child died on the set. So I know it's fine, but it doesn't stop me from feeling a bit anxious. But I think they capture that, don't they? Because don't they have that kid's mother react? She's like,
"Oh yeah. Oh, everyone's reacting in that scene, for sure." There's a lot of nut stuff in the final show, and it makes me laugh so much. The absurdity of the fact that the whole movie is about Hollywood coming to the play, and by the time Hollywood comes to the play, most of the truly batshit crazy stuff that would engage Hollywood has already happened.
I noticed this. I got so pulled into this film, Chris. I think this is genuinely true, the least notes I think I have ever made watching a film for Rewind Reviews. I've made 6 notes. 7. No, 6 notes. One of which was the Hollywood guys missed most of the show.
Yeah. And then they do this whole thing where Clark Peters' character is like loving it, and I'm like, you didn't even see the child on the wire.
Yeah. Which by the way, right? I don't want to disparage the other children because they're all delightful, wonderful little performers. But that kid's got fucking the most talent, the most obvious talent, just out the gate. That kid is a fucking. I'm like, that's a star. Do you know what I mean? I feel like I'm the Hollywood producer myself. That kid's got
the kid everyone remembers is Bob, though, isn't it?
What's that? Sorry.
The kid everyone remembers is Bob, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think I worry about the tone of how they approach Bob in the movie. We'll come back to that. But that in terms of if you were a Hollywood producer and you were looking for the kid to then cast in a thing, if that was the premise, if that really was what was going on here, it's the kid that plays Gabriel. He's amazing. He's so good.
Oh, he's stunning. Yeah,
he is by far
he's
the most
stunning.
well put together as a dancer, as a performer, as a singer. All the other kids are obviously kids doing that, and you can't expect children. But he's that kid's ready to go. And again, I don't mean to be disparaging of the other children, but he is by far the most talented of that bunch. So yeah, the Hollywood guy missed the most talented child, in my opinion. Tragic.
It's so funny. It's honest. It makes me laugh so much every time that they just basically missed it. Yeah. I'm really intrigued. And we don't usually do this, but if you're up for it, I would like you to read out the other 5 notes, and then we'll sort of pick and choose and dive into them.
Sure. So I wrote, this movie is paced insane. so much happens in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That's my first note. The first 5 minutes are so dense. There's so much happens so quickly. Then I added the cast is crazy good though, which I think is fair.
Yeah.
Incredible. Yeah. Then I wrote Hollywood are coming. This is such a simple idea, but it's such a great way to raise the stakes on the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Stand by that. The Weinstein reference doesn't age well.
No. For reference for people, when Mr. Madden is trying to get into Hollywood, he's at the
Yes.
office, and he goes, "There's got to be someone around here. There's got to be someone named Harvey or Bob." And yeah.
But at the time, that would have been a delightful little joke to probably, in terms of like household name recognition. That's a joke that most people would get. Like, there aren't many Hollywood producers whose names are well known enough for you to do a joke like that. You know what I mean? So I get it. The Weinsteins, Harvey and Bob, were like very well known. To make a joke like that function, which is why they were chosen, I'm sure, more than any particular feeling about their work. Although produced a lot of very good things, despite the other stuff. But anyway, so that joke aged about as well as milk. And then my final note, Chris, that I haven't already read out, which was, and I actually, this was going to be the next thing I was going to ask you, because I was curious as to how you felt about this. But I was absolutely blown away at how much of this movie is the Nativity itself, just happening. It's a massive chunk of the movie. It's like the last 30 minutes of the movie are just the Nativity happening, which is, I was really surprised by. I don't know. How do you feel about that? Because it is such a large part of the runtime.
Yeah, it's weird. I've never usually noticed it, but on this watch, I definitely was like, "Oh, fucking hell!" Like this is going on, and it's almost like. Because all the songs, especially "Sparkle and Shine" and the Nazareth ones, all the songs are really good, and you kind of watch it almost like, God, did she have a musical in the back of her mind? Because it almost feels like, well, we've written the songs, we're fucking putting them in the movie,
right?
But it is arguably, I mean, it's difficult, isn't it though? Because it is all very joyous, and so often you don't get to see sort of the nativity part of a nativity story. But I think the reality is, can you imagine? So the movie's like what, an hour and 40? Can you imagine if they cut a fair bit of that nativity out and it was a cool, slick 90 minutes? You know what I mean? But equally, I suppose it would have probably been the most expensive shit to film.
But I also think
I get it.
Well, I also, I bring it up because it's unusual that they did that. So much of the actual show in the show, so to speak, But, because imagine if School of Rock, the last 30 minutes was just the concert. You'd never get away with it. Do you know what I mean? You just wouldn't. It wouldn't happen. And I love School of Rock, but and that's a movie we'll probably cover at some point on this podcast too. But anyway, but for some reason, because this movie is called Nativity, getting to essentially see an entire nativity, scene to scene, and as it's going on, we're progressing all the plots in these small, fun little ways, like having it interrupted by Mr. Shakespeare, by having, getting plot stuff going on, like in the middle of it, obviously it's when we reveal that everyone gets to play Mary and Joseph, or we have like moments like where one kid doesn't feel like doing it, there's the moment go on, sorry.
Yeah, I think you're going to say the same thing I was about to. Go on.
Well, and the choice for the helicopter to show up as the star.
Oh no, I was going to say there's a kid whose Christmas wish. So there's a scene earlier on in the movie where Mr. Madden looks through the Christmas wishes, and his Christmas wish is, and a lot of them write really sweet things about him, but one of the little boy's Christmas wish is that his mum comes to see the play because she doesn't normally see him in things, and that mum shows up, admittedly late and not looking that impressed when she shows up.
Yes.
But like that moment, so that's another example of like an ongoing plot getting resolved.
Yeah,
within that
what they did was they get to give you, like, the movie's called Nativity. You get to see almost an entire nativity. And it's built into this movie about creating the play, and then you get to sort of see the play, and then because you get to see it almost in its entirety, or it feels like that way. And while it's doing that, it's still also resolving storylines, and that's kind of amazing. Like I said, the moment where the helicopter shows up, which is, by the way, the cheesiest idea ever in the world. The helicopter shows up, ends up representing the star, which is why I think they chose to have the Americans come in late, because then you get that reveal halfway through, which is lovely, and I wouldn't change that for the world. So there's tons of great stuff about it, and it really impressed me. And then there's even that moment of drama when the power goes and you don't know how they're going to get around it, and they solve it with candles and what have you. They have the moment where Mr. Shakespeare, I might have already talked about it, like interrupts No, it's not Gabriel. He interrupts Mr. Poppy doing a little like an interstitial, like a narrator comes in and is talking about what's going on. Mr. Shakespeare interrupts the play to be like, this is all a sham, and everyone, and he's just being a villain and trying to make sure it doesn't happen. And all of this stuff is happening alongside it. But I just think, and also now thinking about this from the perspective of knowing that this is a stage show now, the idea that the stage show starts with the school story of the guy putting it on and lying about Hollywood and all that stuff, and then probably just becomes the Nativity. That's, again, that sounds like a lot of fun. I've not seen this show, but I'm willing to put money on that show being a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah, it must be, yeah. So there's nothing about the plot on the thing, but there is a song list. So it's got things like Review, 5-star Review, St. Bernadette's, My Very First Day of School, which is by Mr. Poppy, Hollywood Are Coming. Yeah, and Act 2 starts with a song called Welcome to Hollywood.
Yeah, so that is the middle of the movie then, because they go to Hollywood in the middle of the movie, roughly. Yeah, sort of about 40-50 minutes.
Yeah, but I you look at that song list and you look at that, and I like you say, part of me was like, man, if they tour again, like, be tempted to try and find tickets to go.
Yeah, I think so. And you know what's funny is while you're watching the movie as well, one thing they don't do, which I think would have been a real danger because of how much time we spend in the show later on. We get glimpses of them prepping it, but it's usually in montages, you usually see them like warming up. You get a couple of bars of one of the songs. They're very good at hiding what the actual show they're putting together is, so that when you get to the end, you've not already seen it 100 times. Do you know what I mean? Because I feel like I've had that before as well. Like, by the time we get to the big performance in School of Rock, we've seen them rehearsing it enough that we kind of have an idea what the song is. Do you know what I mean? Like we've heard enough of the song.
Yeah.
And again, you'll never hear me giving School of Rock any shit. I love School of Rock, but it's amazing to think this movie kind of got that right in a way that School of Rock didn't. When School of Rock was like, actually like written and not sort of improvised on the day. So like, you know what I mean? That's mind melting, like how good it is. But my final note was about how surprised I was at the last act of the movie being what it was. But I got something out of every second of those kids performing was joyous. Every single time one of them hit a high note in a song, or like did a dance move and it went well and the crowd liked it, I was happy. The movie just made me happy. So yeah.
Yeah, it's so joyous. Where do you stand on Mr. Poppy? Do you agree that, like, in the hands of a lesser actor, he'd be too annoying and it would ruin the film? Now, don't get me wrong, Mr. Poppy is an irritating character at moments, but he doesn't. I think it walks a fine line well, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. I don't. It's one of those things where, because I don't really understand exactly like the fine line that Mark Watton's walking. Do you know what I mean? I can't really even analyze it. Do you know what I mean? He's just clearly a very talented actor that knows where the line is, or at least understood exactly where to stop pushing that character and where to pull back. So I don't know. I'd love to talk about it in more detail, but I just genuinely don't really understand how he did it, other than just being very aware of himself. Because again, it would have been so easy, especially in a movie where a lot of the dialogue was improvised. It really is on him to monitor that. It really is on him to be careful not to go too far, in a way that it wouldn't be in any other film. It'd be the writer's job of balancing the dialogue and balancing what the character was saying and doing to make sure he wasn't irritating. And I think as well, I tell you what helps. One thing that does help that's not performance-based. The kids obviously fucking adore the man. From minute one. And because he's bringing joy to these kids, I think you forgive him a lot. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And you know that he, like you say, he's got their best interest at heart.
Yes.
And he is, in some respects, like, and what I also really like about, like, there's obviously a lot of stuff that he does that is wrong, including, forging paperwork to get 2 children abroad to America. At which point you're going, where the fuck are the parents in this conversation?
Yeah.
But anyway.
Also, because where are the parents in the sense of, hey, my child was away for days? You can't just go to America overnight.
Because I kind of like the idea that he actually, because the parents are so wrapped up in this, they actually did give them permission. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like if you're going to do it that he didn't actually get permission, you've got to have the parents in the school. Like, what the fuck is going on?
We were worried sick. Our kids were missing for 2 days. Like something like that.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah. But equally, what's really clever is, for example, in the scene where Mr. Madden is trying to get them to sing his song, and Mr. Poppy's got a song. Mr. Poppy's song is better. Like, Mr. Poppy's song genuinely is more catchy. It's more geared to the kids. When we see him interact with the kids, he's shown to be great with them. And, like, what I really like about the fact is, Mr. Poppy, when he's good at his job, he's genuinely good at his job. I think sometimes when films have a character like this, all the good they do is accidental. It's like they accidentally stumble across the right thing. Whereas actually with Mr. Poppy, which is quite layered, he does have moments of being legitimately good at his job.
Yeah. And I think also very perceptive, because there's this really great moment, and I credit to Martin Freeman here, because again, dialogue sort of Freeman's, but there's a brilliant moment when Martin Freeman's character, my brain has died. I thought it'd come to me if I just said Mr. Madden's. Mr. Madden's, goes to apologize to Mr. Poppy, and he says, "You're right. You said this about me, and that turned out to be true. You said this about me, and that turned out to be true. Then you said this about me, and that was true too." And it's, and I assume there was direction to say something to that effect. But, like, it's a great moment because it also proves that Mr. Poppy, while maybe being slightly detached from reality sometimes, and maybe being a little too fun-loving and childlike in himself, He's an empath. He did have it right. He understood what Mr. Madden was feeling and correctly identified what needed to be done. And that's, despite the fact that there's a couple of times when he gets Mr. Madden's in trouble, like when he with the exploding dog story, which is one of the madder moments of the movie. Which for anyone who doesn't, they don't actually explode a dog. He one of the excuses he used to get the phone number of Ashley Jensen's character, Jennifer, they lie, or Mr. Poppy lies and says that Mr. Madden took the dog that was called Cracker, I guess for Christmas Cracker, and decided to make him explode like a cracker. And that's the lie he tells to get the phone number, that the dog has died, and that he died under those circumstances. And it's, like, baffling. You just think, why would you tell that lie? That's such an awful thing to accuse someone of doing.
And I get the feeling, like, the way that scene plays out is he's there and he doesn't tell that lie at first. He's just like, oh, something's happened to the dog. And they're like, well, what's happened to the dog? And he's like, well, the dog exploded. It's like, well, why would the dog explode? Why were explosives anywhere near the dog? Oh, well, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, and I imagine they filmed that too. That I mean, they like 120 hours of footage. So like, I'm going to assume that maybe that is what happened in a scene that didn't make it, because they were just like, it's funnier if we come into this and that's the lie that's been told, and he looks sheepish about it, because that is funny. That's the right call. So yeah, but I will say, and this is always going to be a problem in movies like this. If I was to pick up on something, there are a few moments where, and I hate to use this word again, because I used this word recently in one of these podcasts, but the verisimilitude, right? The believability, my brain's ability to accept the world that's being presented to me. When you make a movie like this, there are little bumps like that. Like, where were those parents for those two kids that went away to America with Mr. Madden's for a couple of days? Or why do the parents not, if he's claimed that Hollywood are coming and they're filming this nativity, the parents are right to be asking, are their kids not getting paid for this? And while they do put in a line where a parent says, it's Hollywood, they've got the money, why aren't we being paid? They don't actually address it. Like, reality, the nativity is still happening. Do you know what I mean? Like, and no one's going, well, wait a minute, no one ever answered my question about being paid. You know, like, it just, bringing it up is enough. And that doesn't feel particularly, like, realistic. And, like, you know, you sort of, in the sense of, it breaks the immersion just very slightly, because you go, actually, yeah, the parents would have that question. And there's a few little bumps like that, and they're not major, and they're never enough, because the movie is kind of silly, and that's, I think, how it gets away with it, is the world is a hyper-realized world anyway. So the movie sort of gets away without ever actually, you know, covering a lot of that stuff. But there are moments like that, and that is just the nature of a film like this, I think. I don't think there's anything you can do to change that. I don't know, did you feel that was the case, or did none of that bother you at all? You just sat here wondering what I'm going on about?
No, I can see. I think it's there. I think they get away with it because that scene where the parents, for example, are asking those questions, the scene isn't about them asking the questions. The scene is about the building pressure on Mr. Madden and the weight of this lie and how it's getting out of hand. So whilst I think those questions are there, and it's, you know, it's the same question as the Hollywood truck appearing towards the end of the nativity, and Jennifer and Mr. Madden getting back together, which we'll probably talk about in more detail, because the way that story's paced. But
that's the other thing. Actually, I just realised they never actually explain how she convinced the Hollywood guy to come. He was very against going. For a good reason.
No, we don't even see a scene of him contemplating it. Like, we see her beg and ask, but there's a very clear, like, we don't then cut back to him thinking about it later. Yeah, so there's all these questions, but it kind of, I think everything in the movie is serving Mr. Madden's story in a way, and to some degree Mr. Poppy's, and I think, you know, those scenes, them coming is not about why he decided to come. It's about Jennifer and him reuniting, and them, the parents asking the questions isn't about the answers to those questions. It's about the building pressure on Mr. Madden. Now, don't get me wrong, and we've talked about this plenty of times, I think, on this podcast. There is a degree of it's a Christmas movie that means you get away with it's a family movie. It's a comedy. It's not. You know, I fully get that someone might be sat here going, well, I don't want everything to serve Mr. Madden. I don't want that scene to be about the building pressure. The movie asks those questions. It's weird to not get an answer to those questions.
But also it could theoretically do both. It's not one or the other.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I think you just go, well, you know, it's a family Christmas movie. That's okay. And I think you get away with it if that stuff doesn't serve the character well. It's like we talked about it many times, and people may be bored of hearing me say it. No Way Home is a work of genius. Like, there are definitely questions you have that you wish you could explore more with some of the characters that come into No Way Home. You're like, oh, well, I want to know, well, we've had this teased. You know, one of them says at one point, I'm keeping it vague, you never know, but one of them says at one point, oh, we worked it out. And you're like, well, how did they work it out? I want to know that. But it's not relevant to the story they're telling. The story they're telling is categorically Peter Parker's story. You know, so that's, and I kind of think this is a bit like that, but equally, I fully accept that, you know, that might not be enough for some people.
Yeah, and again, I'm not even really saying it as like it's the closest I have to a criticism of this film, to be honest with you.
I don't mean you're saying it. I just mean some might.
And I guess really what I'm saying is there is a chance your immersion might be broken when they get back from Hollywood, because you're going, well, where are these kids' parents? Why did they not call the police? Their children were clearly missing for multiple days. Like that, like you know, how are either of these men ever allowed to see these children again? They essentially just kidnapped two of them. Do you know what I mean? Like it's, you know, also, you know, the play is cancelled, the Nativity is cancelled. Then he just decides to uncancel it by taking down the posters that say cancelled, and then everyone shows up. I feel like if word had got round it was cancelled, no one's turning up.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much.
But also, if it was cancelled, why didn't the mayor know that?
It's proper cancelled as well. And the scene where they brush past that of just the mayor basically bumbling in and like distracting the head teacher.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's how we're dealing with her rage. She's just distracted by the mayor.
Which is fine, you know, there's nothing wrong with that as the reason, but it's just like, but shouldn't he have? Because they play it almost like he didn't know it was supposed to be cancelled, and that he thinks it's all tickety boo and was always all tickety boo. But
yeah, it's absolutely how they play it. Yeah,
but when it was cancelled, presumably he's the one who'd arranged them to use the cathedral. So when it was cancelled, that went through him, right? Like it must have done.
Yeah, no, like I'm with you, mate. I'm with you.
Yeah, so there's just these weird little bumps in logic that just like I think like if the movie wasn't so obscenely charming and delightful, you would maybe those could be a more of a bump for you, where you go the reality is being stretched in a way that is pulled me out of it. You know, and for me, a lot of those didn't really come to my mind until after I'd finished the film. You know, almost none of those occurred to me while watching it. The only one that occurred to me while watching it was the LA one, where I went, where are these kids' parents? That blew my mind. Like, even watching the movie, that took me out for a second. Because that is insane. But the majority of the others came to me afterwards. So yeah, so you're our resident love story guy, Chris. To move us on to what is I think pretty much one of the final things I want to talk about. Unless you have any other like moments you want to pick out from the film, which we can do too. But you know, the love story in this film is they were together, then they weren't together, and how they separate them is that he turns around to propose and she's just walked out teary-eyed for reasons absolutely unbeknownst to us. Then he goes to see her. She looks sad that she can't help him. And I guess they never say it out loud, but I guess she sees how he is with the children and is impressed. I'm not sure, like, because maybe what it is, maybe what we're supposed to get out of it is that she didn't think he was getting enough joy out of his life. He was just miserable in his little job, like, and was unhappy in his station in life. And maybe she sees him with these kids, passionate about something again, and sees a bit of the person she initially fell in love with. I'm not sure, but either way, she then chooses to go back to England to see the Nativity, and at the end, she's just with him for some reason, and there's never a moment where they talk about their issue, why they broke up in the first place. They just sort of get back together wordlessly, and it's very confusing. Can you decipher it? Because I'll be honest with you, for me, it's one of the weaker elements of the film. I like that there's a love story in there, but I genuinely don't understand.
Yeah, and it gets a lot of points for Ashley Jensen and Martin Freeman just being amazing actors.
Yeah,
and
just deeply charming
taking...
and absolutely infinitely watchable. Yes, 100%. Putting
and
both of those two on screen and together was a very smart move.
Yeah, and two actors where they're both actors. Some actors have that thing where you feel an inherent warmth to the actors, and that helps you sort of carry the warmth into the characters in a way. Like, there's not many actors that can do that, but there are some that can. I think the problem is, and I've never viewed it that way, right? Your explanation of she felt he wasn't passionate and was letting go of his dreams, but then when she sees him interact with the kids, she realizes that he is passionate about what he does, and she sees that fire in him and decides to want to be with him. That explanation of their love story and the resolution to it is a really sweet, beautiful answer. The problem is, what you could also say is she felt that he could do more and that she could do more, so she went to Hollywood to do more. It didn't work out. She ended up being a secretary who was unhappy, so she decided to come back to England and live with him. Like that. The movie also gives us the pieces for that interpretation. Yeah, I don't like that interpretation. No. I think it does the character really wrong, and badly. Yeah. I think that's a really the movie kind of doesn't treat Jennifer brilliantly. But someone could absolutely
assuming
watch it
that's the interpretation you've that's why it's weird that it's not clear. It should be clearer.
Yeah, and that's what I think the problem is, the fact that they don't take, because your explanation of it is really lovely, and like having just one line of dialogue, or having her say, "You're never," maybe instead of wordless montages, maybe when they fall out, she says, "You're never going to be passionate about teaching, and if you've lost your will to be passionate, then I'm off." And then when they reunite, I was wrong. You are passionate about teaching, or whatever it may be, or even if it's lame, but even if the reason I was a secretary was because I didn't have you there to make me happy and motivate me, and without you I was lost and just meandering. Like, what, and I mean that's lame. Like, that's not very good, but it is at least more than the movie gives us. Mm-hmm. So because there's all these sort of missing pieces to that puzzle, again, Christmas movie, family movie, Martin Freeman, Ashley Jensen, they get away with it. Like, it doesn't break the movie.
As I mentioned earlier, this is another one of those. If you think about it after the film, it occurs to you, but during the movie, you don't notice it at all.
Yeah,
this is what this is.
But I think that's the problem. It's so undetailed, and not only is it undetailed, but there is enough stuff there. Her attitude to teaching at the beginning in the scene with Mr. Shakespeare. Although I suppose then he was just Gordon, because at that point he wasn't a teacher.
That's a good point.
But so it gives you enough to either, as you've done, put together a really nice explanation, or as you could do, a really shitty one. And it needs to. I don't think it would have taken much to clarify it and make it, a bit stronger. There are some great scenes of it. Her watching the video, and actually it's another example of Mr. Poppy getting the balance right. That video is not OTT. He just does it really simply and through the kids. Her, talking about her life as his secretary is really powerful, and I think they do enough to make you warm to her, which is why I think that led you down the path of that kind of really nice explanation, because they make her a sympathetic character, and that is, that interpretation lends itself to that. But I think with only a few lines of dialogue, they could have clarified it a bit more.
Yeah, and what's potentially frustrating is maybe they got those lines of dialogue. Maybe those lines of dialogue exist, and they were on the cutting room floor as a lot of footage ended up, or it's just possible that those words never fell out of those actors' mouths, because obviously when you're in it making a movie with this kind of structure, you can't see the forest for the trees, right? By the time you're in the editing suite and you're like, God, you know what this movie could have used? a line of dialogue to clarify that. It's too late at that point.
Especially as well, because, and I'm making assumptions here based on how talented these actors are. But if you're improvising and you literally are fully immersing yourself in the character because you feel that's the way to do it, this isn't about what's my line. This is about what would I, as this character, do. On either of those interpretations, even the one you've offered, which is the kind of sweeter, nicer interpretation, realistically, that cat Jennifer wouldn't say that in that moment. She wouldn't. The truth of that scene, which if Ashley Jensen is improvising, she has to try and find, is not, oh, I was wrong. That's a line. That's dialogue. If their job is to basically play it real and improvise it, I can see why that dialogue wasn't said, because it wouldn't be said in that moment.
Yeah, 100%.
100%. I was going to say something else about. I can't remember now, but yeah. So I think. Oh, that's the thing. So I think it's just like. Oh, that's what I was going to say. The scene with her though that I want to see, right, is they get back to maybe even a bit of there's an after party to the Nativity, and they properly make up with Mr. Shakespeare, and we actually see Jennifer and Mr. Shakespeare reunite, and that's a nice moment. And then they have some drinks, and then Mr. Madden looks at Jennifer and says, "Let's go home." She says, "Yeah," and she just smiles because it's their home. And then she gets in, she's like, "Oh, there's no decorations." Like, "Oh, okay, fine." And then they go through the door. And the dog runs up to her, and she goes, "Oh!" And then she turns to Mr. Madden and goes, "You mean you didn't explode our dog like a cracker?" like because presumably her parents have phoned her at some point.
At some point that conversation had to be had, I think. That's a good point. You know what? One thing I was slightly sad we didn't get, and this is a tiny thing, and this is just purely my just desire for the roundness, for the completeness, at the end I wanted to see a glimpse of a newspaper column with 5 stars on it. I know that because so much of the movie was put on whether this Nativity got a good review, and while in the end, the real 5 stars was the friends we made along the way. Do you know what I mean? I get it. But because he gets on stage and he dances, and he's had a good time. So you don't need it. You definitely don't need it. I would have just
there's more. There's more examples of it though. I think, like I said earlier, thinking about it, the movie is completely there to serve Mr. Madden's story. And I think it's fair to say Mr. Madden's because, like, as we discussed, Jennifer's thoughts aren't explored that properly. Mm-hmm. But because the movie's there to serve Mr. Madden's story, the ending is actually really quick in general. The play ends, we see that they're together and happy and he likes Christmas again. But what we don't see is Mr. Shakespeare easing off a bit and being a bit more relaxed and happy because he's got his friends back. We don't see Mr. Poppy being given a second chance at the school and doing really well with his job. We don't see, as you say, the critic giving it 5 stars and reviewing it. We don't see the head Pam. I can't remember the character's name, but we don't see the head teacher's character, Mrs. Bevan, decide to stay.
Can I just say, just to blow my own trumpet slightly, I genuinely remembered it that time. I wasn't on the tab for the cast list. I was on my notes ready for the triv. And I genuinely remembered the character's name, and I just wanted to give myself the credit for remembering that. Sorry.
As you should do. Well done. No, that's great. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, so there's actually resolutions and encores and epilogues for all the characters that we don't actually get.
But okay, so let me ask you a question though.
The little boy's mums are giving him a hug and saying, "I'm so glad I came to see you. You were brilliant." Do you know what I mean? There's a bunch.
But at the end of the movie, we get the shot of the Hollywood guy like dancing like very, very raucously. It's like right at the end. It's like 30 seconds from the credits, right? Mm-hmm. You could argue seeing him enjoying himself that much is his ending, right? Then we've got the couple sort of kissing. They're together again, right? Mr. Poppy comes back on stage and he lifts up one of the kids and he's having a good time. Then they coax Mr. Shakespeare onto the stage, and the three of them go
Doesn't
arm in
doesn't
arm.
Mr. Poppy? Sorry to interrupt. Doesn't Mr. Poppy also like declare his love for the other teacher and kiss her or something?
He kisses her. He doesn't declare his love, but yeah, he kisses the other teacher. Or they at least embrace. So you could argue that they get it, and then the original three, that were friends back before they were Mr. They were all known by Mr. So it's Paul, Gordon, and Jennifer, back together, arm in arm, and they're all having a big hug on the stage.
Yeah, symmetry with how the movie opens.
Right, but also that. But would you not argue for is that you mentioned that Mr. Shakespeare doesn't get the moment where we see him having eased off? Is him not smiling and hugging those two on stage right after they've kissed? Is that not that moment?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. That's
but
fair.
Whereas I'm not sure Alan Carr getting up on stage and doing a little jig is the same as the potential conclusion of his story, which is the review. Now, I know the answer, and I'm sure if I was to ask Debbie, is it the answer to that question of why was that not included would be that's not the point of the movie. The point of the movie isn't to get a good review.
Yeah,
it's about the personal character story. But I still wanted the satisfaction of it. It's a good nativity. They deserve their stars.
You could also easily, because you also might go, well, we really wanted to focus on Mr. Madden and Jennifer, but without you could, in the scenes of them being all Christmassy and his house being decorated, they could be sharing a mince pie or whatever under a Christmas tree with the dog, and on the side could be the paper, which is framed in a way that it pans across it, and you could just have the paper with the 5-star review there. Right.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. I didn't need a scene. I just literally put it on screen for 10 seconds. Not even 10 seconds, 2 seconds. I don't know why, but I wanted to see that he got there. Because so much emphasis was put at the beginning of the movie on how the 2-star review or the minus 2-star review that he originally got hurt him. So I don't know. There was just something about that I wanted. But yeah, that's just me wanting my cake and eating it too. Because obviously, wanting to have my cake and eat it too. Because he clearly the point of the movie is actually that it doesn't matter as long as they had fun, right? That's a big part of what the movie's story is, and that's one of the things Mr. Madden learns from Mr. Poppy, right, across the film. So yeah, maybe I'm just being greedy, but yeah. Overall, delightful. Love this movie. I don't think I will go as long between viewings because I saw this when it, a few months after it came out on, DVD, I presume, back in 2009. So, 2010, I assume, by the time I saw it. It's been 13 years since I've seen this movie. And, looking at it now, I had a really good time watching it, and I definitely think I'll, maybe not next year, but the year after, I wouldn't be surprised that I crack this out for Christmas.
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was really pleasantly surprised. Great choice, Chris. Great choice. Are
you gonna watch? Because David Tennant. And by the way, 2012 Nativity 2: Danger in the Manger came out. Like, there's a real period, wasn't there? Like, David Tennant's done Doctor Who at this point. There's a real period, it seems like just after Doctor Who, where David Tennant didn't give a fuck and was just doing anything he fancied the sound of.
I look back, but if you look at Debbie Izzett's movies and the cast she assembled, even looking at Confetti, which I think has Olivia Colman and stuff in it. These are not these are big casts. Huge. I mean, God, Martin Freeman at this point, was a huge name. I just think it was a very attractive prospect to do a, heavily improvised film. I think actors wanted to work with her. I think that's exactly what it is. Because otherwise, I don't know how, on these relatively small budgets. And essentially with Nativity 2, I think that was a straight to DVD film. I can't imagine Tennant necessarily doing that for anyone else. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, fair point.
I think that's just people wanting to work with her. I think.
Yeah, and he's got young children. They might have seen the first one and loved it.
Right, yeah. Also, very, very possible. Yeah. So I don't know. You look at the cast she's worked with, the wealth of talent that she's been able to pull together for her films, and the only thing you can assume, the same way that every time you see those insane casts for these very low budget Wes Anderson movies, actors that would normally, if you put them together, cost you hundreds of millions of dollars just in paying the actors, they all just wanted to work with Wes Anderson, so they just did it for scale. Which is nothing. That's all I can assume. That's all I can assume.
But are you tempted? Are you tempted by Nativity? Not necessarily as a choice. I'm asking here. I'm just in terms of whether you'll watch it.
Yeah. Maybe at some point. I mean, I don't want to. I'll keep you on the tips of your toes, on the edge of your seat for whether I'm choosing it for next week. But I must admit, I enjoyed this enough that I did look at the sequels yesterday and go, God, that's an interesting prospect. I'm looking at them more favourably now in the wake of rewatching this and really enjoying it than I had done previously, where I was a bit unfairly dismissive, I feel.
Yeah. Well, like Dan said, a really great Christmas movie. Kind of everything. We've not really said this either. Everything you want from a Christmas movie, I think. And that's why we watch it every year. So yeah, those are our thoughts. Let's trim it up.
We're gonna give you some trivia. Now there isn't a lot of trivia for this movie. I am really sad about one thing though. So this movie was shot in Coventry, and that's the hometown of the director. And it was actually shot during the summer, and the local inhabitants actually helped decorate the streets to make it look Christmassy for this film, right?
Oh.
But I only discovered the movie was shot in Coventry yesterday after watching it and doing a little bit of looking into the trivia, a bit of investigation. Now, if I'd have known sooner that the movie was set in Coventry, we would have had a guest on this podcast because long-time listener of our podcasts, but podcast runner himself, Aaron Ashmore, not Aaron Ashmore of acting fame, but Aaron Ashmore of the Cov Pod, which is a exclusively Coventry-based podcast. Is from Coventry, loves Coventry. He's literally an author of children's books about Coventry. He's an absolute legend, and he's been a listener of ours for some time. I would have absolutely asked if he wanted to come on to talk about this film if I'd known. But not only that, I've just discovered this morning, with not enough time to actually listen to it myself, he interviewed Debbie Izzet about this movie on his podcast.
Oh, really?
Oh,
that's cool.
I would have loved to have listened to that interview and then had him on to talk about it, and I feel like that's a real missed opportunity. So I am very sorry, Aaron, because I would have loved to have chatted with you, particularly about this. I will listen to his podcast with Debbie Izzet at some point, and if there's any nuggets of information in that interview that we didn't get. Because it's one of those films. It was so low budget and it was so under the radar that just there isn't a huge amount of trivia about it. I can't imagine it got special edition DVD releases with documentaries where all this information is often gathered from. And we have loads of trivia about a film, about how it was produced. Maybe there'll be some information in there, and I'll talk about it at a later date. But also, very quickly, the description for his podcast on the Cov Pod, where he interviewed Debbie Izzet, he says. It's great to hear about how the film came to be, the essential role Coventry plays in the film, and what it was like dangling a child off the cathedral spire. So, clearly, Aaron asking the important questions here, the essential questions, the ones we all want to know. Did she dangle a child off the spire? Although that question's phrasing makes it sound like she absolutely did. So I'll listen to that and I'll come back. On a future episode, maybe I'll do a little coda for this and talk about what was discussed in that podcast. But if you want, I would actually just encourage you to go listen to it yourself. The Cov Pod is a very unusual podcast in that it's literally not going to be for everyone. It is a podcast exclusively about Coventry, the place in England, and it's just not going to be, for everyone. But there's some really interesting stuff. I think, if memory serves, there was an episode where he interviewed a homeless person that lives in Coventry. There was a whole episode on climate change and Coventry's place in that, and I did just did some really interesting stuff. And I've listened to a handful of these episodes. I had no idea he'd done the interview with Debbie Izzard, though. That was a surprise. So yeah, and you know, there's 23 episodes. It's still going as far as I know, because the most recent episode was released August this year, which is only about a month or so ago. So there's still episodes of this coming out every now and then. So just go check it out. Go support the Cov Pod with Aaron Ashmore.
Yeah, nice.
Although
yeah,
it is a little
like
hard to find, because if you put the Cov Pod into Google, it goes, "Did you mean COVID?" And then if you put Aaron Ashmore into Google, it gives you the guy that played Iceman in the X-Men movies. So it's a little tricky to get. SEO is not great on this, and it's no one's fault.
Whoa. I also think Aaron Ashmore was Jake in Animorphs. So
yeah, he was. I would argue less known for that, but yeah. Right, let's do the truth.
Not in this house, my friend.
So she got the idea for the film while watching her daughter's own Nativity play. Her daughter ended up getting a small role in the film, which is delightful. Most of the film, as we talked about, is improvised, with the producers and director telling the actors what would happen in the scene, and then the actors acting it out with no direct script. About 120 hours of footage.
Sorry to interrupt, but I need to correct us because people there's like, well, let's say there's like 8 people listening. One of those people is shouting, Sean Ashmore played Jake and the guy from X-Men. Aaron Ashmore is his twin brother, who I believe was in an episode of Fringe. No, he wasn't. Wait, was he? Yes, yeah. So Sean Ashmore is the X-Men.
Is he? Is that right? Yeah, you're right. I've just looked it up. God, they look so similar. I feel bad for both.
They look so similar.
They're both good actors, but they are because they're not twins, are they? They just happen to just look identical. Like that's just strong genetics.
No, according to Wikipedia, they're identical twins. But
okay. Maybe that's true then. I always was under the impression that the weird thing about them was that they were brothers, not twins, but they just through sheer strong genetics looked identical. But maybe that's just maybe that's my brain. Maybe that's a thing that's true of some other twins or seemingly twins. That are in
brothers.
Films. Yeah. That I've mixed up. But yeah. Apologies. Yeah. Well, either way, if you look up Aaron Ashmore, you definitely, sadly, do not find author of children's books about Coventry and the creator of the Cov Pod. You end up finding the actor, and equally handsome, the two of them. Just want to put that out there.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Good looking group, all these Aaron Ashmores. I now need to find. I know, but I need to find a third Aaron Ashmore now. So we've got the Coventry Aaron Ashmore. We've got the actor Aaron Ashmore. I need a third one to prove my theory that they're all good-looking fellas. That's what I need.
Okay, I'll get on that while you continue with the trip.
Perfect. So there's about 120 hours of footage shot during the 6 weeks of filming. 6 weeks. It's actually that's quite trim. For a film that got 120 hours of footage. 6 weeks is not a big commitment. Maybe another reason why it was easy to get some of these actors in for these sequels, I assume. It says... Oh yeah, so it just says Debbie then spent 10 months editing. I mean, whoever wrote the trivia, a bit too familiar. I would never do such a thing. I definitely didn't do the same thing at the start of the podcast. She spent 10 months editing the film. In the back bedroom of her Coventry home with chief editor Nikki Ager, who also happens to be her partner. Now, because they didn't work together on the fourth one, I don't know if that's a partnership that's still going or not. I have no idea. But certainly at the time of this trivia being written, that was still the case. And of course, 120 hours, coincidentally, is 40 less than the number of glasses Daniel Radcliffe went through to make the Harry Potter movies. Just thought you'd want to know that, Chris.
I do want to know that.
40 less. When Mr. Madden's and the children are running through the Hollywood studios, they must have really shot this on location, because there's actually a moment where you can see a set for medical drama Grey's Anatomy in the background, which I love. That makes me happy. Now, this next piece of trivia blew my fucking mind, Chris. Blew my mind. So, I think we would both say Mrs. Bevan, played brilliantly by Pam Ferris, is a delightful character in this movie, right? She's stern when she needs to be stern, but she is lovely. You feel warmth from that character at all times, yeah? And her speech about how no one believes in these kids is heartbreaking and again delightful, all over again, right? She's amazing, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Did you also know that she played basically the opposite of this character in 1996's Matilda when she played Mrs. Trunchbull? The evil, child-hating, cold-hearted monster of a headmistress of Matilda's school. I could not believe an actor could exist. Honestly, Chris, I would have taken the bet. I would have put money on it that the same actor could not have convincingly portrayed both those roles so well. The range that Pam Ferris clearly has is fucking beyond belief. So just
that's crazy.
A full-on slow clap. That's just incredible. Like when I read that, I couldn't believe my mind. Like I couldn't believe what I was reading. It was just brilliant. At some point, we'll watch Matilda. I think on this podcast, it's another kids classic. And we'll come back to that when we can see the two performances side by side. So anyway, because I've not seen that Matilda film in a long time, but I remember how I felt watching Miss Trunchbull in that movie, and that is terrified. Right, so Debbie Izzet played Mary in her own school, Nativity, when she was 7 years old. Her sister then played Mary the year year before, and then her other sister was Mary the year after. So the Izzet sisters dominated the role of Mary for 3 whole years. No other bloody kid got a shot. Terrible.
Oh wow. That's you gotta give another kid a chance, haven't you?
Yeah, it's all from the same family. That's nepotism for you.
Yeah.
Who was the director of the play? Their mother. Sorry, that was cruel. No. I'm sure they all earned the part by being good actors. I'm sure. Talented family, evidently. Anyway, so the budget of this movie. So I found it in dollars, right? And then I found the figure in. I was looking for the figure in pounds initially because it's a British film, but we got the figure in dollars, and I was like, you know what, that's fine because the number I got from Box Office Mojo for how much it earned in cinemas was also in dollars, so that felt like at least they're comparable. So the budget in American dollars was $2.4 million, which is actually a lot more money than I thought they'd made the movie for. It made $8.4 million in cinemas, so, good work. Tripled your budget. I'm sure everyone involved was happy, hence 3 more sequels. But also, that's just in cinemas. This movie, to my understanding, has been very successful over the years, on streaming services, on DVD, post-release. So I'm sure this has more than made its money back over its time. Like, I'm sure people involved investing in this have been very pleased with the yield. But I want to point out though that when I got the budget in pounds, the person who did it didn't just give the budget in pounds, in the format that I just did it. $2.4 million, which in pounds it was 1.8 million. Right? They gave the exact figure to the penny. To the fucking penny. So I'm going to read it out. So it was £1,847,561.95.
Great work. Great conversion work.
I don't even think that's a conversion. I think they found the fucking paperwork. What? Because that's to the penny.
That's old Aaron Ashmore. At the end of his interview, he'd warmed Debbie Izzet up talking about Coventry. He'd got her talking, and he just went, "Oh, by the way, Debbie, what was the budget for the movie?" She said, "Oh, well, I'll have a look here." And she found some paperwork. She let him know.
I'm on board with this. I hope that's what happened. That's great.
Yeah. On that, by the way, so I started searching Aaron Ashmore and then just adding random job titles. Plumber, gynecologist, like just
Wait, sorry,
find...
was gynecologist genuinely one of your searches? That's amazing.
Yeah. No Aaron Ashmore gynecologist as far as I could tell. But
LinkedIn?
I did then find there's an There's an Aaron Ashmore chef who was on MasterChef.
Oh, yeah?
And he's a good-looking bloke.
Is he?
Then, as you just said, I just searched Aaron Ashmore on LinkedIn. Let me tell you, there are some good-looking Aaron Ashmores out there. Like,
so is this the thing then? There's just if you're an Aaron Ashmore of any kind, you're just destined to be a handsome man. Is that what we're learning?
Look, all I'm saying is
that's what the evidence is suggesting right now.
That is what the evidence is suggesting. I'm saying if I got all these Aaron Ashmores in a room, you better hope that room hasn't got a roof because it's getting steamy.
I don't know how you made this so weird, but you did.
I know. I was about to name like some random like Aaron Ashmores, and I was like, I can't do that. But go look for yourself on LinkedIn.
Lovely,
and they're
lovely. But don't bother any of these people, please.
No, don't do that.
Except for if you do want to go listen to the Cov Pod or buy any of the books or any of the work of the Coventry Aaron Ashmore, who is an absolute legend, loving the bits. Who I think found our podcasts through Steven University, because I believe he and his son were watching Steven Universe together, which is delightful.
I do have to say, when you Google Aaron Ashmore, if you do the like going down to the next thing, you've got movie and TVs, Twin, Ginny and Georgina, X-Men, TV shows, Wife, Net Worth, Height, Chef, and then on the list is Coventry.
Mm-hmm.
On the list of drop downs. So
yeah, well,
cool.
I mean, he's been doing very well. I mean, I've seen. I've been meaning to sort of look at getting one just to support, but the books, the kids' books he's been putting together about Coventry look absolutely joyful. They're really colourful. They look really fun. I don't live in Coventry. I don't think I've ever visited Coventry, if I'm being completely honest. But I really enjoy that. It seems to me that people from Coventry really love where they come from, for better or worse, for right or wrong. Looking at how Debbie has spent a career making movies set in Coventry, and looking at Aaron, who's done a whole podcast on the place and has written books about it. Clearly, Coventry there's something in the water because people seem to be very happy coming out of Coventry. So, thumbs up.
Yeah,
thumbs up.
Fair play.
The final bit of triv is obviously our usual segment. Cars exist. Not a huge number of things this week, but I did on the Internet Movie Car Database did find that the golf cart that they use to escape from security when on the Hollywood lot is a Yamaha Drive PTV. That's the golf cart they escape in. And the big van that they use to pick up the Christmas tree and to sort of head around with the children when they do the montage of them going on field trips, that is a 1989 Ford Transit Mark III. That's the van they use to the blue van that's got the school logo on it that they use multiple times in the film. So there you go. Cars exist, everyone. So that's everything. We just got to cover what next. So for those who don't know, this has been almost the bane of my existence, where basically at the start of this year, I think I teased that I might be turning Clerks, the first movie we did of the series, into the trilogy, and then didn't go that direction, went a different direction. And Chris became sort of, is it fair to say, like, fascinated by the concept of continuing that trend? Is fascinated the right word? I think infatuated is too far, but fascinated.
I like an ongoing motif and the ongoing thing, because you. Like I said, I remember dropping a lot and being like, "Oh, are we going to do it? Are we going to do Clerks 2?" We didn't do Clerks 2, but then when I realised you'd picked a film that could be another trilogy, because did it go Clerks, Shaun of the Dead?
No, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was next, because Shaun of the Dead was also.
Yeah. So then I'm like, well, this is a thing, and then and so I deliberately then did Shaun of the Dead,
which also could have been the first in a trilogy, and then Lethal Weapon, which could have been the first in technically a quadrilogy, but had multiple sequels we could have turned, which is go on.
Which is you hopping on board, and then it became. I think it was your Lethal Weapon is when it became. Can you this thing of describe a film that could be next in that series. Dan described basically Hot Fuzz, but he was talking about Lethal Weapon.
Right.
And then I basically described Lethal Weapon 2, but was talking about Nativity. So yeah, Dan's got a lot of options here. He gets us out of this and just picks a film which doesn't have, which isn't part of a franchise. He could pick a sequel to a film we've done this year, or he could pick he could do it again and continue the game and leave it up to me as to whether I turn whatever he says into an actual trilogy. So I'm excited to see where Daniel goes with this.
Yeah, because I'll be honest with you, Chris. Like with all things, I am now in a position where I don't know where this goes. Because strictly speaking, right, if I wanted to actually pull the trigger on the trilogy, it's Nativity 2. But Nativity 2 in January is the saddest thing I've ever heard in my life, right? That's just the fact of it, right? So my choices realistically are to continue the game and dangle the trilogy thing again, but then swerve, or to put a fucking end to this immediately because I'm tired of it. That's my choices.
Or pick a film that you think, we definitely would have to do as a trilogy, and then see whether I pick up the baton.
Yes, that is an option too. But I feel like when we, so for those who don't know, and the reason why the trilogy thing is a thing at all is because we often do one trilogy per year. We do a trilogy per season of this show, I should say. And historically, my understanding is we've jointly usually chosen the trilogy, right? Or there's been a clear option, because it's the thing that lines up with the real thing that's happening. Sometimes.
Yeah, the only time we didn't do that was when I pulled the trigger early and chose Lord of the Rings, and then realised there was actually a logical reason to choose Lord of the Rings, which was the Rings of Power TV show. So we ended up even moving that back to align with that. But yeah, I think that's the only option it's been. I think that's the only year we haven't pre-decided what the trilogy would be.
Yeah. And I honestly do enjoy that we're both on board with the trilogy, because I'm not going to get much out of like forcing you to choose another movie because I've chosen a certain movie and we feel like they need to be done as a trilogy. So I'd like to come to that conclusion together. So Chris, what I've chosen to do is put a fucking end to this because I'm sick of having to talk about it at the end of every podcast. We've just spent 5 minutes explaining this before I just say the name of the movie we're doing next week. So I'm done. I'm ending it here. I'm sorry to say, and I am just picking a movie that is definitively not a movie that could be sequelized, and is not a sequel to this. Next week, because we haven't done an animated movie since Rugrats at the start of last season, which fucking blew my mind, by the way.
You picking Rugrats 2?
No. No. Rugrats in Paris. No, I'll save that for next year. We're doing the next season. We're doing the sequel season, so we'll save that for then. No, I have decided to go with The Iron Giant, which is one of maybe the greatest animated movies of all time, but a movie I'm fairly confident you've not seen. Is that fair? Am I right?
No, I haven't. No, you're right. Yeah, absolutely right.
So, sorry to put an end to you. I know you were enjoying the trilogies, but I honestly was like, I don't know where this goes anymore. There are no further jokes to make, other than just keep doing the same joke of making a movie sound like one movie and then it's not, or pulling the trigger on the trilogy. And I also like the idea that, when we do reach the idea of a trilogy, it's not one person forcing it on the other. We've both kind of mutually agreed that's the trilogy to tackle.
Well, should we quickly, because we got to get done in a minute, but should we quickly do, because the Iron Giant is the 6th film of the series, should we quickly decide to really put an end to it and stop me picking the start of a trilogy myself after Iron Giant for the lols? Should we decide a trilogy now?
Okay. What do you think? So the trilogies that immediately came to my mind this year, of ones I was thinking we might do, were the Jurassic Park trilogy and the Pirates of the Caribbean trilogy. Both of those came to my brain at some point over this series, and because there's a part of me that wants to do Spider-Man, but there's also a part of me that wants to save the Spider-Man trilogy for when the third Spider-Verse film comes out. But then again, we're at a point now where it's like, how many years until that's coming? So,
yeah. So Jurassic Park, or what was the other one?
Pirates of the Caribbean occurred to me as an option. But these are just things I was thinking about. I mean, what was on the top of your brain? What were you thinking about as like the trilogy? Were you really looking forward to doing the Mummy trilogy? You like a bit of Brendan Fraser?
No, but I mean that does sound great. I hadn't thought for someone that said, "Let's decide now." I hadn't thought. Maybe. So Spider-Man was at mind. I mean, if I was teasing it next week, I'd have probably teased Iron Man to try and make it a thing. But in some ways, Iron Man's part of a wider franchise, isn't it?
It's
Austin
tricky,
Powers we could do at some point.
Oh, yeah.
We discussed that before.
God, yeah.
So that.
If
that
we
could be
if we
quite
were
fun.
going
I don't know.
heavier, we could do like the Godfather trilogy as well. But that feels like a big commitment. I feel like I've got to be in the right mindset for that, and I'm not sure January is the well, it won't be January. We're recording it in thing, but like I don't know if those going out in January is the right move. There's the Terminator trilogy as well. That's also occurred to me. The original.
Have
three.
we done Ocean's 11? Have we done that?
Is it bad that I genuinely don't know? Let's find out.
I don't think we have. No, I don't think we have.
No, we haven't.
So yeah, that's what. God, that film series is bad. I kind of fancy the Cornetto trilogy, but that's not. No, we won't have done it in order.
I guess. I mean, look. If you wanted to, you could choose. We could do it so. Hot Fuzz goes somewhere in the middle of this series, like set episode 7 or something, and then for the final episode of the series we do World's End. We could do it that way, and the Cornetto trilogy is a trilogy just done across the series rather than all together. But
what do you think? I think it's that or the two you met. Jurassic. I can't. For some reason, I keep forgetting the name of your other choice.
Which
Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah, and Pirates of the Caribbean is an interesting one, just on the grounds of like there's the original three that were made sort of close together and were considered trilogy, and then there's these weird like tag-on attempts to keep that franchise going that were all terrible, which you wouldn't review with those first three, I don't think, because they are so.
Well, you could
separate.
argue that about Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park, to me, I'd almost want to do all 6, but you can loosely say that actually Jurassic Park is in some ways 2 trilogies.
It is 2. No, I don't even think that's loose. I think that's like it's 2 trilogies. There's the first 3 were all made within a reasonable amount of time of each other and using the same cast. Then there was a big old gap, and then it came back with a new cast that then led the next 3 movies. So that's 100%. That's 2 trilogies. I would that's for sure. 2 very distinct trilogies. Whereas Pirates of the Caribbean is one really distinct trilogy, with a really clear sort of beginning, middle, and end, and then 3 more attempts, maybe even 4 more attempts to keep the franchise going. That all sort of felt like a fresh start.
I thought there'd only been 5. I thought there'd been 5 Pirates movies. I might be wrong.
There's at least 6. There's at least 6. I'm sure of it. Let me find out. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me check. I don't think so though. Let's see. Pirates of the Caribbean film series. Oh, maybe you're right. Maybe there is only 5. Were there only 2 more attempts to revitalize it? So wait. Shit, you're right. I swore there were at least 2. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, so there's On Stranger Tides and Dead Men Tell No Tales. Which were both other attempts to sort of revitalize the
revitalize.
Yeah, that didn't work. The original 3 were good though. 2003, 2006, 2007. I remember them being good. Actually, no, I remember not loving World's End. Actually, funnily enough, which is the third of that trilogy.
Yeah, my memory is really it's mainly the first one that's any good.
Oh, see, I remember loving Dead Man's Chest. Like in the cinema, I've not seen it since though. This is the interesting thing about the Pirates of the Caribbean movies I haven't seen them since. I saw the first 3 in cinema, and never after, not one. And then I saw Stranger Tides on DVD and was not impressed at all. And then I think I skipped Dead Men Tell No Tales altogether because I was so fed up after Stranger Tides.
Do you want to go Pirates then? Because we talked about it.
I honestly, I genuinely am very open to whatever you feel like. If you really feeling Jurassic Park, if you're really feeling the Cornetto trilogy, let's do that. Like, but I'm feeling open about it.
I think for me the choices are Cornetto trilogy or Pirates. So who's let's fuck it. Let's literally flip a coin.
Do it.
You got a coin with you?
I love that you had this idea but didn't have access to one. Bear with me. I might have. Yes, I do. Once. Oh no.
Oh, this.
Not in this room. Wait.
Hold on, wait. There's got to be a website or something, hasn't there? There you go. If you Google flip a coin.
Oh yeah, Google has a built-in flipper coin. Oh, let's do it. So what are you saying? Would you want to choose? If you want to choose heads or tails for is what?
Yeah. So Cornetto Trilogy is tails because it looks more like a tails, and Pirates of the Caribbean is heads.
Okay, ready?
So you flip.
Okay.
Go on.
Go. It's spinning. Heads. It's heads.
Pirates of the Caribbean.
There you go.
There we go.
Decision made. So what would we do? Do we do that as the last 3 of the series?
No, we'll do it after Iron Giant because then we've got the ability to do all 5 if we want to.
Oh Jesus! You're a prick.
Let's see what happens.
We'll see how we feel. I kind of hate you, but it's fair. Damn, the coin has decided.
No, it would be you. But it would be you deciding because it would go me, you. So actually, you would have that decision.
I have sent you the picture of the heads. I don't know why.
I believe you. I trust you. Yeah, you would. You would have the decision on that, so right. We'll see what happens. But yes, but not to take away from next week, the Iron Giant.
Yeah, Iron Giant next week. Okay, we've got to move because we've only got a few minutes on this file, and I definitely don't want this to split into 2. For those who don't know, 2 hours and 4 minutes is when this becomes 2 files on our recording equipment, and I hate when that happens if it's only for a minute. So, you can catch us in all the usual places. If you want to hear us discuss the Iron Giant right now, you can head over to patreon.com/nothingbutstatic, where you can sign up for as little as $1 a month. You get access to this podcast a week ahead of its usual iTunes, Spotify sort of release. You can also head over to youtube.com/nothingbutstatic UK if you wish to support us by liking things and subscribing to things and commenting on things. And actually, if you've got feedback, mail at nothingbutstatic or putting the comment on the relevant YouTube video for this episode will get to us. We don't use Twitter anymore, so I'm afraid that doesn't work. Other benefits of signing up to the Patreon, if you do decide to do that, of course, is that you get access to our Discord and you get access to our bonus podcast, Nothing But Lyrics, where once a month we analyse the lyrics of a song and either make fun of them or try to make sense of them. Sometimes both. It's good fun. We really enjoy doing that. We've done 5 so far, and they've been a good laugh, and they've all been very different from each other based on the song choices. I think that's nearly all the stuff. Oh, yeah, of course, you can support us in other ways. Tell a friend if you've got a friend who enjoyed the movie Nativity and would like to hear an hour and a half conversation about it, followed by 30 minutes of 2 people talking about trilogies. Then feel free to point them in the direction of this. You can just keep listening. That also supports us. Or based on your podcast app of choice, you could, of course, like and review on the format you're listening. That also helps. So, yeah, that's all the stuff. One of the quicker outros I've done. Who knew that putting a timer on me like that could mean I'd actually do it in a non-waffly way?
But we have got time to say that in the last 10 minutes, I've received 2 LinkedIn messages, and I can't tell you how relieved I was to find out it wasn't one of the Aaron Ashmores I clicked on going, why are you looking at my profile?
I forgot LinkedIn tells people who's been looking at your profile. That's amazing. Anyway, sorry, mate, you got the same name as the guy from X-Men. Actually, no, sorry, you don't have the same name as the guy from X-Men. You have the same name as the guy from Animorphs? No, maybe not. I don't remember one of them.
No, it'd be, have you heard, because they were all American, have you heard of a little English town called Coventry?
Right, we got less than a minute. So, thanks everyone for listening. Come back in a week's time for Iron Giant or, Patreon it if you want to hear it now. We love you all. I've been Dan Doolan. Oh, no, you end this one. Chris ends this one.
I've been Chris.
Go over to you, Chris.
I've been Chris Billingham.
I've been Dan Doolan.
And this review has been rewound.
That was a mess. We did it under the 2 hour 4 minute mark. Stopping my recording right now.